YouTube, what the crap's going on? Heir of Carthage here, back on Total War Rome 2. And this time it is going to be Lusitani versus Athens. Lusitani, of course, being one that many of you requested. I think the only reason why the Lusitani, well, I'd say the only reason. There's several reasons why they're kind of an underdog faction, but they can also be a deadly faction in the right hands. They have some units that are very, very deadly. Veteran Shield Warriors and Lusitani Nobles are definitely good units. But they are lacking compared to some of their peers at the same price range in several respects. Their melee defense is quite excellent. Their charge bonus is good. Their melee attack and weapon damage is also good. And they have javelins, which is handy. Decent health, good morale. Their armor is poor, and their shield block chance is poor. And they also have no shield wall formation, probably because they carry these small shields that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense for them to even have shield wall. But in any case, for that reason, veteran shield warriors are typically at a bit of a disadvantage versus their other barbarian cousins. So, but they're still a fun faction. They have access to Balearic Slingers, which are very good skirmish units if used properly. They have Scutari Cav is, it's not real great for mid-tier Cav. I don't know why they are so bad, but they just are. There's something about these guys that ends up making them pretty weak. I don't know if it's their armor, I don't know what it is, but they just don't seem to do well against heavy horse or other similar units. So again, that puts the Lusitani at a bit of a disadvantage. One of the advantages they do have is these Iberian swordsmen. They're really nice because the Soliferum javelins, that's the iron javelins you see these guys holding, are extremely useful. There's 120 men in the unit. They each have 5 javelins. They can put down a lot of javelins. I believe that should be 600 javelins in total that they can throw, so that can be potentially extremely useful. They can be handy at throwing these javelins at cavalry. They can be handy in throwing them into the back of infantry. They probably would lose to units like Celtic warriors and others in a straight-up fight. Their armor is only 15. It's very poor, and they are extremely vulnerable to missiles. And they're also extremely vulnerable to cav charges. So, I think that's why the Lusitani are kind of an underdog. Again, though, they can be a deadly faction in the right hands. For a long time, a lot of us liked using them to counter Rome, though I don't know that that's a legit tactic for all the time, but it can work sometimes. So, my opponent, let's take a look at his army real quick. I'm going to put it in slow motion just so we can catch all this. He's got 2 archers, 2 Cretan archers, and a javelinman. And then he's got 5 thorax swords, 2 veteran hoplites, or mercenary veteran hoplites, 1 thorax hoplite, 6 citizen cav, which a very questionable decision. These archers could have been extremely handy in the late game, and I think that my opponent makes some critical mistakes here. First of all, I don't think he needs the... Well, I wouldn't have picked the pikemen, and I would have gotten rid of one of the mercenary veteran hoplites, gotten a couple of Thurio spears, used the Thurio spears to lead up to this point and present a large front. He could have then brought his Cretan archers in behind them to try and get shots at my Balearic Slingers, effectively forcing them back. He could have then had his Thurio spears kind of act as a meat shield while he brings in his thorax swords and hoplites in the center. And that would have slowed me down while giving him shots at my Balearic Slingers with his Cretan archers. I would have then had these archers on, on a different flank. He has enough cavalry to protect them, and I would have started firing at my veteran shield warriors. And as many kills as he could get, even frontally, he would get a lot of kills with those archers versus the veteran shield warriors and just hold them for late game. Instead, my opponent comes up seeking an engagement against me, which, in my opinion, is just utter madness. He has extra cavalry too, and he could have totally YOLO charged 2 of them into my veteran shield warriors to give his thorax swordsman a huge advantage. So some very, very critical mistakes that I think my opponent's making here. He doesn't want me to get my charges, but I'm going to, and he really doesn't want to take an engagement where he's going to allow my men to not get picked away by his skirmishers. But again, he's taking that engagement. And you can see that my men's armor is so low that they suffered badly at the hands of the javelins from the thorax swords, but in the charge and in the fight that ensues, they'll do very well. His pikemen were not in pike formation. He's doing some YOLO charging here, and he's going to put them in formation afterwards, which again is kind of weird, but I didn't care because it's an easy way to get 30 kills in his pikemen, and then I'll just pull back from that in a moment. Otherwise, his men are getting beaten badly. His citizen cav are way too far back over here, and these guys are being held up while accomplishing very little at the moment. His other citizen cav moved to this position here. Potentially could try and squeeze through there. Needs to get to my slingers badly. His mercenary veteran hoplites get a chase order on my slingers, and they're running through my veteran shield warriors who are just ripping them a new hole, so to speak, and it's not good. My Lusitani nobles are going to move up and hurl their javelins into the enemy pikemen. This is all very bad for my opponent, and his skirmishers are now going to get thwacked by my Iberian cav, or at least threatened by them. So I'm going to get a quick javelin toss, and I'm kind of baiting and switching. If his citizen cav don't get a good charge, my Iberian cav actually should beat them in melee combat. And like right here, his citizen cav are not in a good position, so my Iberians are going to rear charge them. They get javelins in, and they will actually beat this citizen cav. And I think they'll do so fairly handily. Although normally they wouldn't be that good in that type of fight. So again, I'm able to come through here in a moment and probably threaten them. Let's see, his pikemen disintegrated. My general evaporated them with his javelins, and then I charged into the mercenary veteran hoplites, which will get absolutely throttled by the Lusitani nobles. My opponent is in bad shape here. My Balearic slingers are alive. He finally gets a cav into my back lines, and he's not sure whether to go after my slingers or to rear charge. And by this point, that's a valid concern for him one way or the other. His thorax swords had shield wall and should have, some of them, no, none of them are using it. He should have used it on all of them. It would have prolonged the combat. And here that rear charge does really hurt the morale of my men. And a couple of these, like I said, would have been very helpful, but otherwise his cavalry has been pretty well neutralized by mine. And it's not a good scenario for him. So yeah, my Scutari cav manages to get his citizen cav and kill them. And his infantry now is just in a mass waiver. It's not a good scenario for the Athenians. So I think Athens does have the tools to put up a decent fight versus Lusitani. I would rather be the Lusitani than Athens, I think. But again, Athens has good tools and they can put up a good fight. So let's take a look at the results there. My slinger's getting a lot of kills, especially considering that my opponent outnumbered me with skirmishers. The javelin was a weird pick. The mercenary veteran hoplites were a weird pick. I think you should have just gone with thorax hoplites, got rid of the javelin men. Again, bring a couple, and the pikemen. Bring like 2 or 3 Thurio spears and use those guys to kind of screen the missile engagement so that my Balearic slingers would be forced back. The javelins of Thurio spears would actually be pretty handy against veteran shield warriors because their armor's so low and their shield block chance is low. So again, I think that would have been better. Plus, they would have served as a good meat shield. His thorax swords could have then come in behind, gone into shield wall. All I needed to do was get one of his extra cavalry units in the right position, and I could have been in bad shape. Fun battle. Hope you all enjoyed it, and hopefully you learned something there. I'm pretty fortunate, I think, the way that one turned out. Otherwise, I think the Athenians could have put up a pretty tough fight against me. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed some of this underdog week. If you think I've missed any underdogs, let me know. There's probably others that I could have shown, and some of these that some of you would question. That's fine. I mean, I think that as far as ones we maybe haven't covered, Sparta's kind of an underdog. And there's not a whole lot else on here that are just really bad. I think we covered most of them. But yeah, anyway, hope you all enjoyed it. HeirofCarthage, signing out.